Hello, everyone. Real time with Misibi. So, as of May 2024, the government of Canada has actually introduced new legislation for citizenship by descent. Now, take a listen to the Minister of Immigration speaking last month.
Notorious productive family, the Mississippi dynasty, the prince of King Bae.
Proposed legislation will extend citizenship by descent beyond the first generation in a way that is inclusive and upholds the value of our citizenship. If passed, the bill extends automatic citizenship to anyone who was born outside the country to a Canadian parent before the legislation comes into force. We also introduced amendments to respond to issues raised at parliamentary committees as well as in the courts. They will restore citizenship to those we call lost Canadians. That could be someone who was never able to become a citizen or lost citizenship because of previous and outdated legislative provisions.
New release May 23, 2024. Ottawa Canadian citizenship is highly valued around the world. It provides the right to vote, to run for political office, and to hold a Canadian passport. For many immigrants, citizenship is the key to integration. It also provides a sense of belonging to a diverse and inclusive country built on the principles of democracy, equality, and multiculturalism. Legislative changes in 2009 amended the Citizenship Act to add a first generation limit to citizenship by descent, which means that a Canadian citizen parent can pass on citizenship to a child born outside Canada if they were either born in Canada or naturalized before the birth of the child. As a result of the first generation limit, Canadian citizens who were born outside Canada cannot pass on citizenship to their child born outside Canada and cannot apply for a direct grant of citizenship for a child born outside Canada and adopted. Today, the Honorable Mark Miller, Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, introduces legislation that would extend citizenship by descent beyond the first generation in a way that is inclusive and protects the value of Canadian citizenship. This legislation would automatically confer Canadian citizenship to persons born abroad to a Canadian parent who is also born abroad prior to the coming into force of this legislation. It would also extend access to a direct grant of citizenship to a child born abroad and adopted by a Canadian parents beyond the first generation. Following the coming into force of the legislation, parents born abroad who have or adopted children also born outside Canada would need to have spent at least 1,095 cumulative days of physical presence in Canada prior to the birth or adoption of their child to pass on citizenship. Bill C-71, an act to amend the Citizenship Act, would also restore citizenship to lost Canadians, individuals who lost or never acquired citizenship as a result of outdated provisions of previous citizenship legislation. BC 71 would also provide citizenship to the descendants of lost Canadians and to anyone born abroad to a Canadian parent in the second or subsequent generation before the legislation come into force. So to explain what this bill mean in like a lay language that anybody can quickly understand. So because I'm a Canadian, if I have a kid with anybody outside of Canada, those kids automatically become a Canadian through a citizenship grant. And that's what is called first generation. So that's what they are referring to here as first generation. What this bill is saying is there was a first generation limit set, which means that any or like kids beyond the first generation limit do not automatically become Canadians or are not even Canadian, are not eligible to become Canadian. And what this bill is reinforcing is that kids born beyond the first generations will automatically become Canadian as well through the citizenship grant program. What they're saying here is my kids that I have out of Canada will become citizens, but their kids are not eligible to become citizens. What this bill is actually doing is to enforce it in such a way that their kids can actually become citizens. And it also goes further to say that some of the people who are considered as lost Canadians, so people who were eligible for citizenship, but because of some provisions that made them ineligible, will also be reinforced for them to become citizens. So there are many ways to become a citizen in Canada. There are many pathways, but again, there are so many provisions that are put in place to kind of restrict or to make sure that there's a due process to follow throughout the citizenship process. And that's why. So this bill is actually expanding that domain. So for me personally, I don't even know how to feel about this, right? I just feel like this is the Canadian government extending its reach to people out of Canada. Because once they say um, your children are Canadians. They are literally not your children, they are actually Canadian children, which means that these people have access to children beyond your own even reach, right? So, on the surface, while it looks nice for the immigration process and everything, this is actually Canadian government extending its reach because once they say that second generation, beyond the first generation limit of children, they are Canadian citizens, you can't really do much. They have power. The Canadian government has power over you on top of, on top of the kids. So this is actually them extending their reach to the population out of Canada. Just imagine the millions, the thousands, and millions of people who are now currently eligible to become Canadians. So this is how I think about it. But on the surface, I think it's something good for a lot of people who want to come here, and for a lot of people who had been aspiring to come here, people who had, qualified to come here, but because of some provisions in the past, some laws and stuff like that, were not. So considering everything, I think this is actually good news. A lot of people, even people who are within Canada and people who have family all around the world who want to bring their family and loved ones here, this is extremely good news for them. There's more information that we're currently waiting on this process on how it's going to be unfolding, the application process and everything. So once the bill passes in Parliament and receives the royal assent from the British Crown, then it's going to go in effect, and then so they start rolling out the process for applications and everything and how it's going to go. I'm sure they're going to post more information on the Canadian government website. I'll probably leave a link in the description to their website, the particular section which is talking about this bill. And you can also go for yourself, read to find out more for yourself, do your own due diligence, and see if you qualify. And just wait. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys. Bye bye. Bye bye.